So can astrology predict the future? My answer or response to that is it doesn't actually matter. I'll tell you why. I was listening to a webinar by a very popular astrologer who I actually admire a great deal. He was promoting and talking about the use of what's called whole sign houses, a particular way of working with the chart. And he was advocating it because of their predictive power. And he asked rhetorically, if we're not trying to predict the future with astrology, what are we doing? And even though he was proposing that question rhetorically, it is actually a very important question to pause on. What are we doing with astrology or with any of our spiritual practices? Because in this case, to take that question seriously is an invitation for us to consider not just whether astrology works, but what is it working for? What is astrology in service of or in service to? Now, if we listen carefully to most of the material that's available in blogs and podcasts and in the literature in general, the answer is we want to predict the future. That's what we want to do. But why do we want to do this? And if we tune in, it doesn't take a lot of discernment to recognize that we want to do this so we can avoid what we don't want and to maximize what we do want. These are very natural motivations. You know, our nervous systems are wired in many ways to be pain-avoiding and pleasure-seeking. That's what we're wired to do. But we're also having other motivations. And if we look at the spiritual traditions, the sages and the saints, the yogis and the meditators around the world, they recognize these wirings, they recognize that natural impulse, and they recognize the limited wisdom of that. But they also tune into a deeper wisdom, which reveals that to be fixated, to be driven by primarily the pain-avoiding and pleasure-seeking motivations means that we are basically firing up these engines of suffering. If you look at your own life, the lives of those you know well, even if obviously history, we can see what it looks like when these engines are driving us. And these engines are so powerful. Psychologists certainly have identified this, that we can see how most of our thoughts, most of our emotions, our actions, even our social structures and systems have been harnessed by these energies, enrolled in the service of these impulses of accumulation and of avoidance. And the power of these to enroll us and to enroll our systems and structures doesn't ignore spiritual systems as well. Astrology as well can be enrolled, as it were, in the service of these two engines of suffering. So while astrology can become a foot soldier in the army of avoid pain and maximize gain, or, it can also actually, as a spiritual practice, offer us another path, a path that is less focused on predicting and controlling events and more interested in attuning to and living in alignment with the archetypal energies of the soul, which are reflected in the astrological chart. So this is a reorientation and a re-answering of the question, what are we doing? We are moving away from controlling, which is a hopeless effort, into aligning. And this takes us to a fundamental level of orientation that really has nothing to do with which house system one uses or what zodiac is quote unquote the best. It really goes to the root of our motivation and our purpose for engaging with or deploying this ancient and sacred system. So I would say, in my view, what are we doing here? It would be that we are trying to fulfill astrology's deeper purpose, which really transcends predicting events, is really deeper than predicting events, and sees through the fear-based motivations of prediction. And we use astrology as a tool for awakening from the trance of struggling to avoid pain and maximize pleasure. Then we are wisely using this tool to strengthen our capacity to cut through our fear-based conditioning. And the beauty, the tremendous beauty of the astrological system and the astrological language is that it has this amazing precision that allows us to shift from the question of what will happen to me, and instead to explore precisely and profoundly the more life-enriching question: how can I more fully and joyfully embody the archetypal energies of the soul in this season of my life?